Dr. Rodriguez, welcome. We're really happy to have you here today. One of the things I like to do to start with is to just think about what is probably a pretty complicated relationship right now. There's a parent and their kid in the next room with an iPad or hopefully a computer trying to figure out their school lessons. What should they be thinking right now, especially if one of the things we hope they're thinking about is how do we close these horribly inequitable gaps in education right now?
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to talk with you a bit about this and the opportunity to extend this work and continue the partnership with the Minneapolis Foundation and with others. Parents have a big role. Parents have always had a big role. And it's particularly these days when we're all staying at home and sheltering in place. The first thing we have to remember is that parents need to be parents. And that's really their primary role. Parents still need to be parents. And students really need to depend on the consistency of that parenting. And they need that parent relationship to be in place. A lot of students find a lot of consistency by going to school, and the consistency of the relationships with their teachers and their peers, their mentors, their coaches, their counselors. All of these relationships bring great consistency and a sense of safety and support to students. And the hard part about the staying at home and the remote instruction is that a lot of those relationships have been disrupted, the relationships that students have in their classroom. And this is really important and not something that we should overlook, because learning is a social activity. And that social context of the classroom and school and those relationships that make learning function have been disrupted. So we have to reestablish and newly create opportunities for these kinds of relationships. So we have to rely on the relationships that parents have with their students. Be parents. The second thing parents can do then is to seek networks of supports, to reestablish and build supports that students will need to be in place, utilizing other family members, older children and adolescents, older brothers and sisters and siblings, nieces and nephews and cousins. It's really important because this provides an opportunity for students to learn from other members of the family. When possible, when we can connect with our elders or older generations in the family through phone calls or video calls, students can explore those kinds of connections as well. And then parents can also help connect with teachers and school leaders. Hopefully I think schools are doing a great job of reaching out and being accessible to parents and families. That has to work on both ends. Parents also have to be connecting with teachers and with school leaders, particularly to find out what other kinds of resources and supports are available, and making sure that their children are connecting and reestablishing those relationships.
It's such a fascinating picture you paint, because it's really one that's very different than peer learning. A room full of kids at the same age and vaguely level of the other kids. Now you're almost painting the picture of the one-room schoolhouse.
I really appreciate that one-room schoolhouse, because here's an interesting dynamic now that is happening and that we now have to rely on. And it's a dynamic we've always relied on in the history of humanity. There is no learning theory that suggests the optimal way of learning is to put students and children in age-specific groups. People have always learned from each other. Younger children learn from older children, and all children learn from their elders, and communities create learning opportunities. Now we have to really rely on that. We have to rely on older siblings and older members of the family and the communities in order to create that learning environment.